Mr. Potato Head, dump, dump, dump. Mr. Potato Head, dumpy, dumpy guy. Mr. Potato Head is an awesome guy, and I just recently picked him up for a very good deal at a Dollarama store. And I was so excited to get him because there are many amazing things about Mr. Potato Head and his ability to help children with their fine motor skills and many other skills as well. So I'm going to show you 3 activities you can do with Mr. P to help your kids gain fine motor skills and engage with a number of other skills that can benefit them as they grow older. So activity number 1 is the simplest one, and that is, well, you should probably buy 2 Mr. Potato Heads for this activity. So this activity, you have 2 Mr. Potato Heads, and you set one up. So let's say he's the first Mr. Potato Head, and he's got some eyes, a nose, and a mustache there. And now the kid has to copy this, and he's got to say, okay, I see he's got a red nose, I got to put the red nose in. And he's then going to see, oh, he's got some hat. I've got to visually scan the table. I've got to cross my midline. Oh, I see a green hat. I'm going to put him on. And the kid is basically just going to copy what you have already prepared. So it's basically called imitation, which is one of the earlier skills of development. And if they're having trouble with it, you can always kind of cue them a little bit, like, I see someone is missing a red nose, or just kind of basic cues like that so that they can get, oh yeah, oh, it's the red nose, that's what's missing. So first is that imitation with 2 Mr. Potato Heads. And then the second activity that's a little bit more difficult could be, well, you take Mr. Potato Head, and what you can do is you can cut this out, and you can cut those little shapes out, or you can photocopy this box. So I photocopied this and kind of blew it up a little bit. So as you can see here in my little cards, I have made the shapes. So I could put out a couple of these shapes. So you can see the little hand right there. And then the kid has to, oh, I see I've got to put a green leaf in. So he's got to put a green leaf in. Next is the red nose. So by following through on the shapes that you put out, the child is sequencing the events and activities. So you might notice, oh, they seem to be going to the 4th item on your pictures. Cue them, oh, I see that you're on the 2nd or the 3rd item. And that way they learn to go left to right and sequence the activity from the first step to the last step. And then you can kind of phase out the cues as they get a little more confident with it, or increase the difficulty by making it a little bit longer or more complex. You could also get other Mr. Potato Head appendages and make this much more elaborate than what I have done here. So again, you're working on visual motor, where they're seeing these pictures, they're visually scanning, oh, they're going to find the item, motor movement and coordination, and then they've got to hold Mr. Potato Head with one hand. So they're working on bimanual hand grip, and they're also working on pincer grip, which is a precursor grip to drawing and writing and holding a pencil. So again, they're really engaging in a number of different skills with that activity. And thirdly, what you could do is you could have something like this. So you could again have just cut out these images. I photocopied them and kind of blew them up a bit, but you can take a sheet of paper and number it 1 to 20 or 1 to 10, whatever number of appendages you have. And then you could, if you cut them out, just place the pictures along the numbers. And that might actually be even better than what I did, because every time you kind of can change the code, right? So if your 1 is an ear, then next time you set it up, if you just have the cutouts, you could have maybe the nose as 1. So they're not just learning and recalling the order of things. So with this one, they've got to roll a die or 2 or however many. So they're engaging in the fine motor. Then they look at the die and they say, okay, they've got to add, or maybe they need a little bit of help with that, 3 plus 1. Then they've got to go to the chart, scan down to find number 4, identify the shape. Oh, it's a mouth. Then they got to go back to the items, again, visually scan, identify where is the mouth, find the mouth, grab the Mr. Potato Head, and put the mouth in the correct hole. So they're going through, again, a whole bunch of different stages of sequencing and have to decode. So they're building their fine motor skills, their sustained attention, because they've got to go through a number of steps, right? Once they get the number, they have to then go to the chart and find the shape, and then continue the process. So that one's a little bit more difficult for them. You can also make this one a little bit more challenging by writing the words. If the child is able to read, you can just write ears or mustache and mouth. Again, then they're also working on their reading skills, or auditory if you just want to say the words, and then they have to visually scan. So I'm going to tell you how I optimized this activity, because when I bought Mr. P, there were a few little problems that I had to work out with him. I found that putting some of these appendages and items into their places was difficult and too hard for some of the kids. And so what I needed to do was I took a nail file, and I think you need a metal one for this, and I sawed down kind of along the edges just closer, because I felt like that made it slide in and out quite a bit easier. It needs to be quite a bit easier for the little guys to do this. So I feel like that really modified it. And there were a couple that I just couldn't quite get with this, so I had a friend of mine grind it down a little bit. But I think probably if I had just worked on it a little longer with this, I could have done it myself. But I think that's the best modification, to just really get the best out of your Mr. Potato Head and to build fine motor skills and all of these great skills for your kids as they grow. And thank you so much for watching my video. Oh my goodness, I forgot one more tip that will be very useful as your kids get older. I would say you can work on things like directionality and laterality. So let's talk about what that means in English versus jargon. So laterality, you can say, use your left hand to grab the red nose, and then the kid has to work on which side is left, which side is right. So there's always that tip, right? They should be able to see an L for the left side. So okay, yeah, that's my left hand. And then they grab the red nose and put it in. So that's one way you can work on the kids' kind of lefts and rights, and also on directionality. So put the ear below Mr. Potato Head's nose. So again, part of that directionality learning, below, above. It doesn't necessarily have to make sense. Oh, what's below? Oh yeah, below is down here. So put the ear below the red nose. They followed the instructions for that. Also, we all remember those classes, yoga classes or exercise classes we've been to, where you're looking at the teacher and their left hand is up, and we're trying to figure out which one's our left hand as we're watching them in reverse. So that's the way that you can make it even more difficult, is you're saying, all right, now put on Mr. Potato Head's left hand, right? So then they've got to think, oh, my left hand is this side. If Mr. Potato Head is facing me, it's going to be the opposite side. So again, they're going to have to look at both hands and think, oh shoot, okay. I think looking at the thumb positioning and looking at the hand and then figuring out, okay, this is Mr. Potato Head's left or right hand, which would be the opposite of my or the kid's left or right hand. So that's kind of like the hardest level you can get it, but you can really work with some of the older kids on that stuff, right? So again, most of the exercises I suggested were for younger kids, but again, working to a higher level on Mr. P's laterality or my laterality and directionality. So thank you so much for tuning in. Mr. P has loved having you here, and Mr. P will now be dumping his way home. A dumpy dump dump, Mr. Potato Head, dumpy guy.